Robinson Crusoe, Chapter 25. Robinson releases a Spaniard. Friday discovers his father. Accommodation provided for these new guests, who were afterwards sent to liberate the other Spaniards. Arrival of an English vessel. I had now not a moment to lose, for 19 of the dreadful wretches sat upon the ground, all close huddled together, and had just sent the other two to butcher the poor Christian, and bring him perhaps limb by limb to their fire. And they were stooped down to untie the bands at his feet. I turned to Friday. "Now, Friday," said I, "do as I bid thee." Friday said he would. "Then, Friday," says I, "do exactly as you see me do. Fail in nothing." So I set down one of the muskets and the fowling piece upon the ground, and Friday did the like by his. And with the other musket I took my aim at the savages, bidding him to do the like. Then, asking if he was ready, he said yes. "Then fire at them," said I, and at the same moment I fired also. Friday took his aim so much better than I that on the side that he shot he killed 2 of them and wounded 3 more. And on my side I killed 1 and wounded 2. They were, you may be sure, in a dreadful consternation, and all of them who were not hurt jumped upon their feet, but did not immediately know which way to run or which way to look, for they knew not from whence their destruction came. Friday kept his eyes close upon me, that, as I had bid him, he might observe what I did. So as soon as the first shot was made, I threw down the piece and took up the fowling piece, and Friday did like. He saw me cock and present. He did the same. "Are you ready, Friday?" said I. "Yes," said he. "Let fly, then," said I, "in the name of God." And with that I fired again among the amazed wretches, and so did Friday. And as our pieces were now loaded with what I called swan shot, or small pistol bullets, we found only 2 drop, but so many were wounded that they ran about yelling and screaming like mad creatures, all bloody, and miserably wounded, most of them. Whereof 3 more fell quickly after, though not quite dead. "Now, Friday," says I, laying down the discharged pieces and taking up the musket which was yet loaded, "follow me," says I, which he did with a great deal of courage. Upon which I rushed out of the wood and showed myself and Friday close at my foot. As soon as I perceived they saw me, I shouted as loud as I could, and bade Friday to do so too. And running as fast as I could, which by the way was not very fast, being loaded with arms as I was, I made directly toward the poor victim, who was, as I said, lying upon the beach or shore between the place where they sat and the sea. The 2 butchers who were just going to work with him had left him at the surprise of our first fire, and fled in a terrible fright at the seaside, and had jumped into a canoe, and 3 more of the rest made the same way. I turned to Friday and bid him step forward and fire at them. He understood me immediately, and running about 40 yards to be near them, he shot at them, and I thought he had killed them all, for I saw them all fall of a heap into the boat, though I saw 2 of them up again quickly. However, he killed 2 of them and wounded the third, so that he lay down in the bottom of the boat as if he'd been dead. While my man Friday fired at them, I pulled out my knife and cut the flags that bound the poor victim, and loosing his hands and feet, I lifted him up and asked him in the Portuguese tongue who he was. He answered in Latin, "Christianus," but was so weak and faint that he could scarce stand or speak. I took my bottle out of my pocket and gave it to him, making signs that he should drink, which he did, and I gave him a piece of bread, which he ate. Then I asked him what countryman he was, and he said, "Espagnol," and being a little recovered, he let me know by all the signs he could possibly make how much he was in my debt for his deliverance. "Señor," said I, with as much Spanish as I could make up, "we will talk afterwards, but we must fight. If you have any strength left, take this pistol and sword and lay about me." He took them very thankfully, and no sooner had he had the arms in his hands, but, as if they had put new vigor into him, he flew upon his murderers like fury, and had cut two of them in pieces in an instant. For the truth is, as the whole was a surprise to them, so the poor creatures were much frightened with the noise of our pieces, that they fell down for mere amazement and fear, and had no more power to attempt their own escape than their flesh had to resist our shot. And that was the case of those 5 that Friday shot at in the boat. For as 3 of them fell with the hurt they received, so the other 2 fell with the fright. I kept my piece in my hand still without firing, being willing to keep my charge ready, because I had given the Spaniard my pistol and sword. So I called to Friday, and bade him run up to the tree from whence we first fired, and fetch the arms which lay there, that had been discharged, which he did with great swiftness. And then giving him my musket, I sat down myself to load all the rest again, and bade them come to me when they wanted. While I was loading these pieces, there happened a fierce engagement between the Spaniard and one of the savages, who made at him with one of their great wooden swords, the same weapon that was to have killed him before if I had not prevented it. The Spaniard, who was as bold and as brave as could be imagined, though weak, had fought this Indian a good while, and had cut him 2 great wounds on his head. But the savage, being a stout, lusty fellow, closing in with his hand, had thrown him down, being faint, and was wringing his sword out of his hand, when the Spaniard, though uttermost wisely quitting the sword, drew the pistol from his girdle, shot the savage through the body, and killed him upon the spot, before I, who was running to help him, could come near him. Friday, being now left to his liberty, pursued the flying wretches with no weapon in his hand but his hatchet, and with that he dispatched those 3 who, as I said before, were wounded at first and fallen, and all the rest he could come up with. And the Spaniard, coming to me for a gun, I gave him one of the fowling pieces, with which he pursued 2 of the savages, and wounded them both. But as he was not able to run, they both got away from him into the wood, where Friday pursued them, and killed one of them. But the other was too nimble for him, and though he was wounded, yet had plunged himself into the sea, and swam with all his might off to those 2 who were left in the canoe. Which 3 in the canoe, with one wounded, who we know not whether he died or no, were all that escaped our hands of 1 in 20. The account of the rest is as follows: 3 killed at our first shot from the tree, 2 killed in the next shot, 2 killed by Friday in the boat, 2 killed by Defoe of those at first wounded, 1 killed by Defoe in the wood, 3 killed by the Spaniard, 4 killed, being found dropped here and there of their wounds, or killed by Friday in his chase of them. 4 escaped in the boat, whereof 1 wounded, if not dead. 21 in all. Those that were in the canoe worked hard to get out of gunshot, and though Friday made 2 or 3 shots at them, I did not find that he hit any of them. Friday would fain have had me take one of their canoes and pursue them, and indeed I was very anxious about their escape, lest carrying the news home to their people, they should come back perhaps with 200 or 300 of their canoes, and devour us by their mere multitude. So I consented to pursue them by sea, and running to one of their canoes, I jumped in, and bade Friday follow me. But when I was in the canoe, I was surprised to find another poor creature lie there alive, bound hand and foot, as the Spaniard was, for the slaughter, and almost dead with fear, not knowing what the matter was, for he had not been able to look up over the side of the boat. He was tied so hard, neck and heels, and had been tied so long, that he had really but little life in him. I immediately cut the twisted flags or rushes which they had bound him with, and would have helped him up, but he could not stand or speak, but groaned most piteously, believing it seemed still that he was only unbound in order to be killed. When Friday came to him, I bade him speak to him and tell him of his deliverance, and pulling out my bottle made him give the poor wretch a dram, which, with the news of his being delivered, revived him, and he sat up in the boat. But when Friday came to hear him speak and look in his face, it would have moved anyone to tears to have seen how Friday kissed him, embraced him, hugged him, cried, laughed, hallooed, jumped about, danced, sang. Then cried again, wrung his hands, beat his own face and head, then sang and jumped about again like a distracted creature. It was a good while before I could make him speak to me or tell me what was the matter. But when he came a little to himself, he told me that it was his father. It was not easy for me to express how it moved me to see what ecstasy and filial affection had worked in this poor savage at the sight of his father, and of his being delivered from death. Nor indeed can I describe half the extravagances of his affection after this, for he went into the boat and out of the boat a great many things. When he went in to him, he would sit down by him, open his breast, and hold his father's head close to his bosom, half an hour together to nourish it. Then he took his arms and ankles, which were numbed and stiff with the binding, and chafed and rubbed them with his hands. And I, perceiving what the cause was, gave him some rum out of my bottle to rub them with, which did them a great deal of good. This action put an end to our pursuit of the canoe with the other savages, who were now gotten almost out of sight, and I was happy for us that we did not, for it blew so hard within 2 hours after, and before they could be gotten a quarter of the way, and continued blowing so hard all night, and that from the northwest, which was against them, that I should not suppose their boat could live, or that they ever reached to their own coast. But to return to Friday. He was so busy about his father that I could not find in my heart to take him off for some time. But after I thought he could leave him a little, called him to me, and he came jumping and laughing and pleased to the highest extreme. Then I asked him if he had given his father any bread. He shook his head and said, "None. Ugly dog eat all up itself." So I gave him a cake of bread out of a little pouch I carried on purpose. I also gave him a dram for himself, but he would not taste it, but carried it to his father. I had in my pocket also 2 or 3 bunches of my raisins, so I gave him a handful of them for his father. He had no sooner given his father these raisins, but I saw him come out of the boat and run away, as if he had been bewitched. He ran at such a rate, for he was the swiftest fellow of his foot that ever I saw. I say he ran at such a rate that he was out of sight, as it were, in an instant, and though I called and hallooed too after him, it was all one away he went. And in a quarter of an hour I saw him come back again, though not so fast as he went. And as he came nearer, I found his pace was slacker, because he had something in his hand. When he came up to me, I found he had been quite home for an earthen jug or pot to bring his father some fresh water, and that he had got 2 more cakes or loaves of bread. The bread he gave me, but the water he carried to his father. However, as I was very thirsty too, I took a sup of it. This water revived his father more than all the rum or spirits I had given him, for he was just fainting with thirst. When his father had drank, I called to him to know if there was any water left. He said yes, and I bade him give it to the poor Spaniard, who was in as much want of it as his father. And I sent one of the cakes that Friday brought to the Spaniard too, who was indeed very weak, and was reposing himself upon a green place under the shade of a tree, and whose limbs were also very stiff and very much swelled with the rude bandage he had been tied with. When I saw that upon Friday coming to him with the water, he sat up and drank, and took the bread and began to eat, I went to him and gave him a handful of raisins. He looked up in my face with all the tokens of gratitude and thankfulness that could appear in any countenance, but was so weak, notwithstanding he had so exerted himself in the fight, that he could not stand up upon his feet. He tried to do it 2 or 3 times, but was really not able. His ankles were so swelled and so painful to him, so I bade him sit still and caused Friday to rub his ankles and bathe them with rum as he had done his father's. And we'll pause here and we'll continue with this chapter in the next video. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Thanks so much for watching. I love you guys. As Tigger says, ta-ta for now.